Couple for television. From the raw Australia.
Introducing Wendy's Bacon.
You learn fast around dairy products. Fresh taste is fragile. Cold is the only natural way to hold it. Like Marie's Buttermilk Ranch dressing. You see, creamy shelf dressings use chemical preservatives. But Marie's holds its freshness with cold, not chemicals. So it's a natural dairy freshness. And taste it, too. So pass by the preservatives. Try Marie's refrigerated creamy dressing. Taste freshness only cold can hold.
We're from Lauderdale!
Why is there so much attention being focused on mixed marriages when interracial couples make up less than 1% of the 49 million marriages in the United States? Christopher and Sandra Taylor have been married for 15 years, and they've got 2 children. John and Kathleen Kane have been married for 2 years, and their son Ian is 10 months old. They believe one explanation is that this is still a race-conscious country, and mixing races is considered taboo. I'm Nancy Merrill. This is People Are Talking. Tried to get in on my opening. I think you did, too. Nice to have you with us. It's a pleasure, he said. Tell me quickly how you met each other.
Actually, Katie and I met each other in Boston at a restaurant. And from the time that we met, we've been together ever since.
We just knew right away once John and I met.
What's the background of your family? Are you both from Boston?
I'm from Quincy.
And I'm from Westchester County in New York.
All right. Had ever in your family the discussion ever come up about interracial marriages?
Sure, yeah.
And what did your parents say?
Well, my mother always taught me you take people as you find them. And my father thought, why would you do that? He in his mind, he knew there would be problems. And he didn't think it was such a good idea.
What kind of problems?
Just because he was black and I was white.
No. Your father said it before you met him. Your father said that he didn't think...
He didn't elaborate on him. He just mentioned that.
How about you, John?
Well, her father, I want to just comment on that. Her father went through, I have a good relationship with her father now, but it was an adjustment for him initially because when he grew up, he went through a tradition of no Irish need apply, and you had discrimination before you even deal with the interracial situation. And her being the only daughter, he wants to be sure that his daughter is going to be happy and comfortable and not have to deal with any problems. And this is one of the illusions, I think. If you have not been exposed to the kind of situation that we have, we just happen to meet, and she happens to be white and I happen to be black.
When was this? How many years ago?
2 years ago.
Only 2 years ago. Okay. What would have happened if this were 10 years ago, do you think?
It depends on your relationship. You really have to know how you feel about each other before you get yourself involved in an interracial relationship. There are enough problems in terms of white relationships and black relationships. I mean, you really have to have a commitment to each other in order to be what I call sensitized to, what one might have to deal with.
I guess the point I'm getting after, Christopher, Thunder, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. Were the times easier now for an interracial couple to get together and to get married than it were when you got married, which is what, how many years ago?
15.
15. Now, that's around, let's say, in the 60s when the civil rights movement was most focused. Was it easier then or harder? It would seem to me it had to be harder.
Yeah, I think it was harder. I think the attitudes have softened a bit, and we see more interracial marriages now. When we got married, it certainly was taboo. It certainly was something that both of our families fought against very actively. And in fact, we fought against it very actively. I think we did everything we could to resist it. And I think the attraction between us was too strong, and finally we said, hey, let's stop fighting this.
What did your parents do? You said your parents were involved in trying to stop it. Specifically, what did they do?
Kit had really the battle to deal with.
Well, I think, as Sandra said, we broke up about 7 times and moved far apart and really needed to ask ourselves, is this the kind of situation that we want to be involved in? And my parents felt that there were just too many potential problems in terms of, they tried the whole gamut. What are your friends going to feel? How's it going to affect the other members of your family when they have to go to school and hear all of the rumors about their brother married a nigger and stuff like that?
Did they use the word nigger?
Oh, yeah.
Your parents used that word?
Yeah.
What did you say?
What did I say? I listened a lot,
What
but I didn't say much.
What part of the country were they from?
They were from Ohio, Middle West, good Middle American stock.
And where were you from?
Kentucky.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting combination, isn't it?
But not, I mean, I use that term not in terms of maybe how you took it. They were making a point. I mean, they were using the term purposely to make the point. What would your sisters and brothers feel if a kid in the class used that term? The children were a big issue. It finally got down to, if you want to do this, you're going to do this on your own, but don't have children, because what are they going to do? You know, what are they going to be? And those were all issues that we considered, that we looked at. And
What did you consider? Between the two of you, you have 3 children on 2 couples. What did you consider that your kids are going to go through?
Well, I guess I was concerned about their identity, how they would see themselves, their social adjustment. Would they be seen as outcasts? Would they be seen as misfits? And I really felt that the kind of love that we felt for each other could really be transmitted to them, and that their identity was going to be part of our identity.
But is that strong enough? You have this very strong love, both of you are spoken about, but a child, once they become school age, are not with you all the time, and peer pressure is enormous, and children are very, very cruel. What happened in the situation? You have 2 sons.
Right. And we have an 11-year-old son and a 7-year-old son, and they both are in the school system. And certainly they have experienced some discrimination. I think, though, what I would disagree with is that I think if you give children a really good foundation, a good basis in the home, that they can withstand a lot of that peer pressure.
The kind of discrimination that they have gone through. You live in Brookline, is that right?
Yes.
And John and Kitty, you live right here in Boston on Beacon here. We should say that both of you are psychologists, and but you don't work together.
Well, we do some work together.
On occasion.
Yes, on occasion.
But John and Kitty, you have a management consulting firm, and you do work together.
Yes.
You work this at home. Let's go back to the fact that you're from Brookline. You said your kids are in the public school system, and they have had some types of discriminatory behavior levied against them. When they come home and they tell you about this, what do you say? Particularly if it's a white child who said something to them and their father's white.
well, I think the fear is more, the fear of the parent of what's going to happen is much stronger than the situation. I think one of the biggest days of my life is when my 11-year-old, who was then 7, came home in tears and was very upset. And I said, what happened at school? And his tears dried up, and he became very articulate. And he said, well, I got into a hassle with some other kids. And I said, well, what does that mean? Well, there's some pushing and some name-calling. And I said, well, what about the name-calling? How did you feel about it? And he said, well, you know, they were calling me names, and they said my father was white and my mother was black. And I said, well, you know, and I sort of shrugged my shoulders because I didn't know exactly what to do, so I, for the few times in my life, kept my mouth shut.
And you're a psychologist,
yeah,
too. You're
right.
supposed to know what to do.
No. And he said, he paused and he said, you know, they were right. And so I guess that's okay. And I said, well, what does that make you? And he thought for a minute and he said, I guess that makes me tan. And that's his racial identity, or at least for a period of time, if that was important to him. But what I got out of that was that he had resolved that himself, and lots of events have occurred since, and it's not a big a psychological trauma as I think we get concerned about as parents. Not that it's not a concern, but I think if the couple likes each other, respects each other, and has a very strong personal commitment, then these other issues need to be considered. But for us, we decided the risks were worth it.
We're talking about discriminatory behavior against your children. What about you, when you walk down the street, the two of you, as a couple, have you ever had any comments, any actions, any body language from people passing you in the streets? And if so, does it differ from city to suburban area, for instance, where you live?
Well, you take it from two different perspectives. Prior to Ian being born, we would get subliminal people look at a black and white couple. They assume many things because there are different stereotypes, I think, and images of black and white couples. Then when Ian was born, it's different. We walk down the street and people stop us, okay, because they see a happy child, and he's a part of our happiness. And but you can feel people that are uncomfortable about it.
Mm-hmm. I noticed the difference just from going from Boston, where we live, to Quincy, where my mother lived. In Boston, I don't think it's as noticeable because there's a lot more interracial couples. Where out in Quincy, it's primarily white, so we're a lot more noticeable.
Do you think that interracial couples are more comfortable in city atmospheres because of the acceptance, also particularly I'm thinking of in Boston, because of the university environment, which tends to be more accepting than, for instance, suburbia?
Mm-hmm. Well, we spent most of our 15 years in suburbia, in a sense, but in a very small community, about 40,000, so it hasn't been Brookline. And I think there we were kind of a novelty, but primarily we did not face a lot of discrimination. I think there's another issue here, however, and that's the issue of the type of interracial marriage. As a black woman, I don't think being married to a white man, I have faced as much discrimination as perhaps a black man married to a white woman. And I think that has a lot to do with our culture. And
Why do you think that's so?
Well, I just think that in this culture, the greatest taboo, or the greatest infraction, is for the black man to marry the white woman. And I think that we have more of those marriages, although the kind of combination I'm in isn't increasing. But again, I think that goes back to historical roots in terms of slavery, in terms of the kinds of taboo about the black man, and I think he's seen as a threat in terms of this system and this society. And I think as a black woman, I'm not seen as the same kind of threat to the power system.
I understand what you're saying. In fact, I just read a statistic. There's only 46,000 marriages like yours, that is a black woman marrying a white man, and the figures are almost 3 or 4 times higher for the situation of a black man being married to a white woman. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, renowned Harvard psychologist Alvin Toussaint will be joining us. Please stay with us.
You can enjoy anything.
A salad?
Enjoy a salad with white, crisp choy bean sprouts.
A family?
Enjoy your family with quick, nutritious choy chow mein. So good so many ways, there's just no end to what you can enjoy.
A party?
Enjoy a party with crunchy choy egg rolls.
La Choy makes Chinese food. Swing American.
Enjoy something tonight.
Hello.
Lynn, it's Harold. I'm calling long distance.
What time is it?
2 a.m. your time, sleepyhead.
2 a.m.?
Oh, you would believe the money I save by calling after 11 p.m.
Really?
For sure.
I could save you even more money, Harold.
Oh, baby.
To save 5 to 50% on long distance before as well as after 11 p.m., call MCI and stop talking in someone else's sleep.
Okay, Miss America, let's have a thick, creamy milkshake. Low-fat cottage cheese, no way. Come on, Buddy, give this soul something creamy and delicious. If it were up to you, neither of us could fit into this suit. This is light and lively low-fat cottage cheese. Wonderful. Ooh, creamy, delicious. That's low-fat. Now can we give up carrot sticks?
Low-fat cottage cheese. Another light and lively taste that satisfies your body and soul.
This is Spice-A-Puff, a new way to clean your face. If you don't know why it has 2 sides, you don't know your skin. Most skin is combination skin, dry and oily. The Spice-A-Puff green side gently washes dry, sensitive areas. The white side deep cleans oil and dirt, removes dead skin cells. Both leave skin fresher and healthier looking. Whose skin needs 2-sided Spice-A-Puff? Your skin. Get the combination puff for combination skin. Spice-A-Puff.
Dr. Alvin Poussaint, nationally known psychiatrist from Harvard University, who's done a great deal of research and written many articles on the black-white relationship in the United States, and Diane Harris, a PhD psychologist. And Diane, as I understand it, you work with the Dorchester Counseling Center and school psychologist for the Boston School Department. Thank you so much for coming on. Alvin, welcome back again. I'd like to get into, just before we went into the break, John mentioned some of the stereotypes about black-white relationships. Could we get into some of them right now?
Yeah, I think there are quite a few of them. It was quite a taboo for a long time. I mean, it's just been since 1966 that they struck the laws from the books that prevented interracial marriages in the United States. That's a very short time ago. There was a particular taboo against black male, white female relationships because this was part of the Southern protecting sacred white womanhood, which has a genetic component, that is keeping white purity. But traditionally, even in the South, white men could fraternize and socialize with black women. And in fact, the reason why many black people, most of us, are light-skinned and not completely dark is because of relationships between white males and black females. But they lynched black men who tried to, in any way, engage white females. So the taboo is much stronger over the black male, white female relationship. Then there were images of black males as being sexual studs of different types, being animalistic, sexual, the notion that they were all rapists and so on. So a lot of the oppression was focused primarily on the black male. And if you heard the expression, the very common one, that white people would ask each other when they talked about desegregation, they would say, but would you want your daughter to marry one? It was never, would you want your son to marry one? So a lot of it has to do with protecting white womanhood, which has some sexist components in it too.
And you're talking about up to 1966, it was against the law
That's
to have
right.
an interracial marriage.
Yeah, most of the southern states.
How about the northern states?
The northern states didn't have laws on books, but sometimes you were taking your well-being in your hands if you dated interracially. That is, you were more likely to be met with hostility and a great deal of discrimination from people. Interracial couples in New York have described experiences to me where people spit at them, you know, when they were out a number of years ago. I'm sure that a lot of that behavior has diminished. But you still get, even around Boston, interracial couples describe hostile looks, nasty comments from people. There's some interracial couples in the suburbs who are afraid to come into Boston because of the racial tension. And there's certainly parts of the city that they would not go, that I'm sure John and Kathleen would not go. But it might be safer for them to go, Kit and Sandra, to go to certain places because the white man has more power in the system.
And she is less of a threat.
That's right.
Also, she is much lighter skinned than John. How does this play into it?
Well, I think it plays into it somewhat. Sometimes, for instance, parents have less objection to an interracial marriage, that is, the white parents, if the black person is fair-skinned, that is, closer to white, so they're not as threatened by the color issue. And sometimes, you know, even selecting mates, that the color issue may come into it. You just never know. The reason why I say that is because beauty standards, particularly for females in America, are white beauty standards, both for the black female and the white female, even though that's been changing. So what you're attracted to and your motivation can become very, very complicated. I don't think it's as simple as saying, we fell in love. I don't think it's that simple. I think that
that's what they both said.
I know that's what they both said, and it's probably true, but I think it's more complicated than that. What do you become attracted to fall in love with? What influences that? How are you conditioned in terms of your own attractions, your standards of beauty, what you want? That doesn't mean that people have to be badly motivated, but I don't think that they should ignore certain kinds of motivations, or at least they should examine them. For instance, there may be some black men attracted to white women because they don't like black women, right? I mean, that's possible. I've known couples of that type where actually, suppose, for instance, there's a black male, and you look back at his history, and all the women he's ever dated had been white. Wouldn't you wonder about that? That was saying something about his preference. If you had a black female and all of the people she ever dated were white, you would wonder about that.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Well, let's suppose...
You know, if they weren't black, or what about Italians who date all Irish or something like that? If they had different color of skin, you wouldn't be saying this. It's the skin differentiation that brings this up.
Because there's an issue of discrimination and having, say, anti-black feelings. That it is possible for a black person, say, to hate other blacks or hate black people, and therefore they want to associate with white people, and that includes getting married to them.
I understand what you're saying on that level. Now, Diane, we were talking about the color of skin. You deal with bi-ethnic children, and we're talking about identity. In your experience, does it make a difference if the child is just very light-skinned or more dark-skinned or very dark in dealing with who they are?
I certainly think that there is a difference in terms of how children resolve the conflict, often of being identified as black and yet having this sense that they are bi-ethnic. I think phenotype is very important, but one thing that we have to remember is that blacks come in all colors. And while there may be a very light-skinned child who would like to identify white, society in most cases, and certainly this is evidence in the little bit of research that's available, will certainly perceive them as black. And what we need to do, and especially the children that I see, present problems in identity, that they have a very difficult time in resolving that conflict between what they would like to be perceived and how they are perceived by society. So I think, yes, phenotype is very important, and that's what we're dealing with.
You're talking about how they would like to be perceived. That's an older child. I'm talking about a little kid who hasn't come in. You see it in very, very young children?
Even with young children, you also see it, because while we're talking about racial awareness, which occurs between 4 to 5 years of age, the identity, of course, doesn't necessarily take place and evolve until adolescence. 5, 6-year-olds are very much aware racially of the difference between themselves and others.
I should think it would be a tremendous burden when a child comes home. Let's even talk about a teenager. And they come home and they are the product of an interracial couple. And let's say it was more harsh than what happened in your case, Sandra. And they love both their parents and they want to identify with both their parents, but their adolescence, which is the worst time of their life already. And in a fit of anger, I can see them just lashing out and saying, look what's happened to me as a result. I mean, I know how teenagers talk. And what happens then? What happens, first of all, to the parents, and what happens to the child? They must have tremendous guilt after attack the very parents who love them and cared enough to give birth to them. It seems a very, very, you're making it sound fairly calm. It seems to me an enormously traumatic experience.
Certainly it's conflictual, and that conflict really does surface during adolescence, because all adolescents, regardless of color, certainly go through a period of identity crisis. But it's much more intense when you are dealing with, for example, bi-ethnic child. But that's why it's very important for parents to sort of take on that burden in preparing their children for adolescence before they reach adolescence. It's very important for them to teach them the coping mechanisms of dealing with the reality of being identified as a black child and yet knowing that they have parents who are of separate ethnicities.
Phone question for you. Hello there, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello?
Hi there, we can hear you, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm very much in admiration of the presentation today. I'm a black woman. I'm charming and adorable, but my husband took flight, and I feel I'm a representative of something that's not being discussed. There's a good deal of black women raising single-parent homes because of the black flight of the black male. And, you know, it's very upsetting to the children, and it's depressing to the female.
Yes, can I just have, you mean a lot of black women are bringing up children by themselves because the black male has married white women?
Yes, growing up I was considered a white-oriented black male. I'm soft-spoken and I'm genteel and I'm attractive and thought of what they call teasing tan. When my husband married me, he was just getting away from the era of passing. As the relationship continued, and we got a little complicated towards the middle, like some people do, he took flight to a white female and left his children and myself, which we talked about it. He left me because of this woman. It was a status thing. He wanted to reach another plateau in his life. That's the only way he could explain it. And several other women and myself, I went back to school, we discussed this. It wasn't because we were bombastic, overbearing, black females. It was just a status symbol in these men's lives, and they wanted an accomplishment.
And we've heard the argument before. I have to take a break now, but I thank you for your phone call. And when we come back, let's address what has happened to the black female population as a result of black males marrying white women. We're taking a break. We're coming right back. Don't go away.
Beginning Wednesday, a three-part Eyewitness News special report. It concerns the health of you and your family. Eyewitness News has learned that many of our tax-supported water supplies are contaminated and unfit for human consumption. What is being done to correct the problem? And how can you know if your water is safe? Be sure to watch Jack Williams and Liz Walker as they report Troubled Waters, beginning Wednesday during Eyewitness News at 6 and 11.
It's 1:45. What would I do without you? When a guy's hungry for flavor to top off his favorite foods, you come through.
French's bold and spicy deli mustard for the rich, robust flavor you've been waiting for.
The windows are locked up, the door's tight. Well, whatever gets you through your night. What would we do without you?
It's not just mustard, it's French's.
What would we do without you?
Are the kids asleep?
Get ready for a big seal test treat. Polar Bar ice cream squares, made with luscious seal test vanilla ice cream. And Polar Bar ice cream squares have a rich coating made with real milk chocolate.
I'd love another.
Polar Bar, the big seal test treat. So good, adults want to keep it for themselves.
Feel good from your head to your solar plexus. Chalk up a win, no matter what your sex is. Look for the name with the double X's. Hair and skin care from Nexus.
Look for the double X's. Nexus. Visit these fine salons and receive your free trial-size product from Nexus.
Naturally, with Nexus.
Hi, I'm Judy McGee from Dorchester, and we're for today. Alvin, just before we went into the break, I do want to address that phone call. The woman is very concerned that black men are not marrying black women, are going off and marrying white men. Now, she has the same concern that white women do in a sense. There is a shortage of men, number one.
Yeah.
But truly, have you had any direct relationship in a situation like this in the black community? And she said also that her husband thought by leaving her and marrying a white woman, he basically had married up socially. And she's very resentful.
That's all possible. I would say there's growing resentment, if not already a great deal.